When we want to change a camera position in the sketching phase, in the development phase of this project, and still want to use the power of AI as it is now in ProMeAI and Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, in this iteration of how AI is built, the next step would naturally be to model this project. If you really want a different camera angle of this exact project that you see here, and let's say we are happy with this, you have to model that project and then move the camera and then make a screen dump or a crude render and then integrate it into sketch rendering or region rendering. That's the only way. So I just loaded Studio Max there. That's my preferred 3D application. Yeah, this is the geometry of the project that you see here, and the way that you make a model over a image, because obviously, yeah, the classical way is to develop a project more classical, make 3D models, both analog and in computer models, obviously, like for example this, make renders of that. But here we turn it all around. We start with the render and then we make a 3D model from that render. And the way we do that, for example, you can see this camera here. If we take this camera and you can see this is actual geometry, I can take this geometry there, for example, and we can move it around. We can change the project there. So this is an actual project with dimensions and materials, and the sun will react realistic on a project like this. So this is a real project now for the first time. And if I just take wireframe like that, this is wireframe. So you can see behind my project is the actual picture. This picture you saw, yeah, here. We liked this project, so I took this project into 3D Studio Max as a background, and then I just modeled it. If you want a realistic project from a picture, you cannot just do anything. If we take, for example, a box here, you can see if we raise the box there, you can see over to the right, this is 2 meters and 40 centimeters, which is typically a large outdoor door. So you have to scale things correctly also. But just to say in terms of ProMeAI, and that could be Stable Diffusion also, the way they work is that they interpret a bitmap, a picture's lines. And so the only way that you can move a camera is to make the project, model the project as I've done here with the correct materials and so forth, and then make another camera. For example, you can see here, this is the project as I've worked with it. And then I made the other camera, for example, there. Let's just jump into the second camera there. And then you can change the view. Then I can screen dump this or make a crude render and then take it into sketch rendering, preferably first, or just region rendering, and take the process from there. And then hope that the interpretation of the materials are the same. And so we will have a look on that in just a second. The other thing is that if we are in this camera here, and we take the wireframes there, you can see the picture here has this line of the ceiling is a straight line. It's the same degrees slope there as it is there, but the facade down here is pulled in a little bit. So if we make the same geometrical build-up in 3D Studio Max, it's not possible. Here you can see it. This is very, very clear that this is a higher glass facade there and a lower glass facade there. But if you see the picture here, I would say that this facade down here visually looks like the same height as this. I would say these are the same height. But when you start to model it, you kind of understand the actual project. And it's not possible to make it like that. You can also see there's a thing inside here where you can see you can get higher here inside than you can over here inside. So remember that the illusion that you get from these AI image generators is nothing but illusions. And that's kind of the main point about this. As we spoke about before, the way they work just as large language model is that they guess on the next pixel or areas of pixels, and then they make the pictures out from either a reference or a prompt. And so when you take it into Studio Max and model from those pictures, you actually think, oh, it's not possible. The way that they have drawn the geometry on the picture and the illusion of the picture is that, oh, this is actually also over here, for example, what is happening there. Exactly. And when you model it in 3D, you just see that it is not realistic to do it like that. There are geometrical things that looks correct, but isn't correct. It's not possible to make a project like this. So it's an illusion. I went into region rendering and then I popped the new view into this. And you can see this is the old view and this is the new view. And I got these renders here. And this view was, if we go into Studio Max, this was this view. So I screen dumped this or made a crude render, I can't remember, and then I got this. The materials are kind of close, and the perspective is actually spot on. We can try to screen dump it. I don't think it's necessary because I know that this is very, very close to the actual geometry. And so this project is the same as this project, but you have to model the project in 3D Studio Max or another application and move the camera and then screen dump it, a crude rendering, and then pop it into an application like ProMeAI and Stable Diffusion, and then make the render and then work with the render in ProMeAI. And then when you have the render, work with it in Photoshop and so forth. So the big question is there in this workflow a lot to gain compared to the classical workflow where you work with classical rendering software like V-Ray or something like that? You render out in the more classical way in the desired resolution with the correct sun and so forth in comparison to this. And I would say this workflow is also complicated. We've tried a process where we got to this point here through concept development and discussion and communication and materials and different projects and so forth. We modeled this. Maybe we even should discuss the model with the client. Is this what we want? And has this even anything to do with our actual project? And what about behind here and so forth? And when we have done that, then move the process into a rendering process in ProMeAI and get these materials to be the same as these materials. And how is it not visible that this is another angle there? Because it's very clear that this is one angle and this is another angle. And that's not as clear, I think, on this. And yeah, what about the context? Is that the precise thing? The conclusion is just integrating AI in a real-life workflow with architectural projects is complicated and just as complicated as classical workflows. If you found this video useful, the full course is available at Cadman.dk, ProMeAI Masterclass for Architects.